Captain Jake Morrison had been in deep space for 3 months when his life changed forever. The Star Runner was on a routine mapping mission near the edge of human space, far from any colonies or trade routes. Jake was reviewing star charts. In his ready room, when the alarm sounded throughout the ship, he rushed to the bridge where Lieutenant Amy Brooks was bent over her communications console, her face pale with excitement and fear. The bridge crew had gathered around her station, all staring at the strange patterns dancing across her screens. "Captain, you need to hear this," Amy said, her voice shaking slightly. "We picked up a transmission about 20 minutes ago. At first I thought it was interference, but the computer detected structured language patterns." Jake moved closer to the console. "Play it back." The sound that filled the bridge was unlike anything they had ever heard. It wasn't the usual static or mechanical noise they expected from space. These were voices, alien voices, speaking in tones that clearly conveyed panic and desperation, even without understanding the words. Everyone on the bridge could feel the fear in those alien sounds. Chief Science Officer Tom Mitchell was already running the transmission through every translation program the ship had. His fingers flew across his keyboard as he fed the signal through linguistic analysis software designed to break down unknown languages. "The AI is finding patterns," Tom reported. "It's picking up repeated word clusters and emotional markers. Give me a few more minutes, and I might have something." Jake watched the screen show wave patterns and frequency analyses. This was it. First contact with alien life. But instead of the peaceful meeting humanity had always imagined, they were listening to what sounded like a cry for help. Tom suddenly straightened up at his station. "Captain, I've got partial translations coming through. The computer has identified several key terms." He paused, double-checking his readings. "Sir, they're calling themselves the Kaleri, and they're talking about being under attack by something called the Dominion Empire." The bridge fell completely silent. Jake felt his heart racing as the reality hit him. Not only had they made contact with aliens, but those aliens were in trouble. "There's more, sir," Tom continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're specifically asking for Earth's help. They know about us, Captain. They know about humans, and they're calling for our help." Jake stared at the communication console, processing what he'd just heard. How did these aliens know about Earth? How long had they been watching humanity? And why were they asking humans for help? Lieutenant Amy Brooks looked up from her station. "Captain, should I try to respond to their signal?" Jake hesitated. Decision was way above his pay grade. Making unauthorized contact with alien species could start a war or create a diplomatic disaster. But ignoring a cry for help went against everything he believed in. "Negative," he finally said. "We're sending this straight to Earth Command. Prepare a data burst with everything we've recorded. Include our current position and status." Within 6 hours, the transmission had reached Admiral Lisa Carter at Stellar Command Headquarters on Luna. She sat in the war room with her senior staff, listening to the alien voices over and over again. Colonel Mike Davis, her chief of staff, argued for caution. "Admiral, we don't know anything about these aliens or this Dominion Empire. This could be a trap or some kind of test. We should study this signal for months before making any decisions." But Admiral Carter had already made up her mind. She'd listened to those desperate voices and heard something that transcended species. Barriers, the sound of people asking for help. "Colonel, I understand your concerns," she said, standing up from the conference table. "But those voices don't sound like they have months to wait for us to make a decision. If someone is crying for help, we answer." She walked to the window overlooking Earth, watching the blue planet slowly rotate below. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if they were alone in the universe. Well, they knew they weren't, and their new neighbors needed help. "Prepare the fleet," Admiral Carter ordered. "We're going to answer that call." Captain Jenny Walsh had been running stealth missions for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for what she was about to see. The Ghost Rider dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kaleri system, its advanced cloaking technology hiding them from enemy sensors. Walsh gathered her crew around the main display screen as they began their approach. "Remember, "We're here to observe and report back," she told her team. "No heroics, no matter what we see down there. Our job is to gather intelligence, so Admiral. Carter knows what we're dealing with." The journey to the inner system took 4 hours. As they got closer to the Kolari homeworld, the crew started picking up massive energy signatures on their sensors. Sergeant Rick Taylor, a veteran of the Mars Colony Wars, was monitoring the tactical displays when he noticed something wrong. "Captain, I'm reading multiple large vessels in orbit around the planet. Configuration unknown, but they're big, really big." Walsh moved to the navigation station where Pilot Officer Kate Sullivan was adjusting their course to avoid detection. "Can you get us close enough for visual confirmation without being spotted?" Kate nodded, her hands steady on the controls despite the tension in her voice. "I can get us within scanning range using the planet's magnetic field to mask our signature. But if they have advanced sensors, they might still pick us up." "Do it," Walsh ordered. 20 minutes later, they had a clear view of the Kolari homeworld, and the sight left everyone speechless. The planet below had once been beautiful beyond imagination. Floating cities hung in the atmosphere like crystal jewels, connected by graceful bridges that seemed to defy gravity. Gardens and parks covered every surface, creating a world that looked more like paradise than any planet humans had ever seen. But now, those magnificent cities were burning. Thick black smoke rose from the wreckage of the floating structures, and pieces of broken crystal architecture tumbled through the sky like falling stars. In orbit above the planet, enormous Dominion warships moved slowly and deliberately, their massive cargo bays opening and closing as they collected something from the surface: intelligence. Officer Dan Foster was recording everything through the ship's advanced cameras when he zoomed in on the surface. What he saw made his blood run cold. "Captain, you need to see this." The main screen showed groups of tall, elegant beings being herded into containment fields by armored soldiers. The Kolari were unlike anything humans had imagined. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, but were incredibly thin and graceful, with skin that seemed almost transparent in the planet's sunlight. Their movements were fluid and peaceful, like dancers or artists rather than warriors. "My God," whispered Kate Sullivan as they watched a Kolari family being separated on the surface. Below, parents reached desperately for their children as Dominion soldiers forced them into different transport vessels. They don't even know how to fight back. Look at them, they're not even trying to resist. Sergeant Taylor was studying the enemy ships through the tactical scanner when he noticed something important. "Captain, take a look at these Dominion vessels. Their design is all wrong for real combat." Walsh moved to his station. "What do you mean?" "These ships are built to look scary, not to fight," Taylor explained, pointing to the screen. "See how their weapons are mounted? They're positioned for maximum visual impact, not tactical efficiency. And look at their armor plating, it's thick in some places and thin in others. No military engineer would design ships like this if they expected to face serious opposition." Dan Foster was analyzing the enemy fleet's movement patterns when he made an even more disturbing discovery. "Captain, I've been watching how they operate. They're not using any advanced battle tactics. They're just overwhelming their targets. With size and numbers, it's like they've never had to actually fight a real war." The horrible truth began to dawn on the human crew. The galaxy was apparently filled with peaceful civilizations like the Kolari species that had evolved on safe worlds without dangerous predators or the need to develop weapons and military tactics. The Dominion Empire had been ruling through fear and intimidation for so long that they'd never learned how to handle real resistance. "These aliens have never seen warfare like humans know it," Walsh said quietly. "The Dominion has been bullying defenseless civilizations for centuries, maybe longer. They have no idea what they'd face if they came up against a species that actually knows how to fight." As they watched, another Kolari transport was loaded with prisoners. The elegant aliens moved like broken spirits, their graceful forms bent. With despair, some of the younger Kolari were crying, a sound that somehow translated across species barriers and made the human crew feel sick with anger. Walsh had seen enough. She turned to her communications officer. "Get me a secure channel back to Earth. Priority 1 encryption. Admiral Carter needs to see these recordings immediately." She looked one last time at the burning paradise below them, where a peaceful civilization was being destroyed by bullies who had never faced real opposition. The Dominion Empire was about to learn what happened when they picked on someone who could actually fight back. "Prepare to head home," she ordered. "We've got a war to start." The news from Captain Walsh's scouting mission reached Earth like a lightning bolt. Within 12 hours, every major news network was broadcasting the recordings from the Kalari system. Humans across the solar system watched in horror as the peaceful alien civilization was torn apart by the Dominion Empire. But what happened next surprised even the most optimistic observers. For the first time in over 2 centuries, humanity put aside all their differences. The Solar Federation, Mars Colonial Alliance, Europa Mining Consortium, and even the fierce Belt Pirates all sent representatives to an emergency meeting on Luna. These groups had been fighting each other for resources and territory for generations. But the sight of those defenseless Kalari being herded like animals changed everything. Admiral Frank Bennett walked into the assembly hall knowing this was the most important moment of his career. He was a living legend, the man who had saved the asteroid mining colonies during the Titan Rebellion 15 years earlier. His weathered face and steel-gray hair commanded respect from every faction leader in the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bennett began, his voice carrying the authority of decades of command experience, "we've all seen the recordings. We know what's happening out there. The question is simple. Are we going to let this continue, or are we going to do something about it?" The room erupted in debate, but it was different from the usual political arguments. This time everyone was asking the same question. How quickly could they mobilize their forces? The Mars Colonial Alliance offered their newest battleships. The Europa stations promised their advanced shield technology. Even the Belt Pirates volunteered their fastest attack craft within 48 hours. Admiral Bennett found himself in command of the largest military force in human history. Over 300 ships from every corner of the solar system began, gathering at the staging area near Jupiter. It was a sight that brought tears to the eyes of old veterans who had never thought they'd see. Humanity united again. Dr. Rachel Adams hadn't slept in 3 days. She stood in the weapons development laboratory on Titan, surrounded by holographic displays showing ship modifications and weapon systems. Her team of engineers was working frantically to upgrade the human fleet for what they all knew would be unlike any battle humanity had ever fought. "We're not just building weapons to destroy their ships," she explained to her exhausted staff. "We need to build weapons that will terrify them. These Dominion forces have been bullying peaceful species for centuries. They've never faced an enemy that fights back with intelligence and fury." Her team developed new missile systems that would create spectacular explosions visible from orbit. They installed speakers on the outer hulls of ships that could broadcast terrifying sounds. During battle, every human vessel was equipped with recording devices that would capture the battle and broadcast it across the galaxy. Meanwhile, Colonel Steve Murphy was putting Marine units through the most intensive training of their lives in the combat simulation centers on Mars. His soldiers practiced boarding enemy vessels and fighting in zero gravity. These weren't ordinary military exercises. They were preparing for psychological warfare. "The goal isn't just to beat them," Murphy told his Marines as they practiced moving through mock-ups of Dominion ship corridors. "The goal is to make them so afraid that they never want to fight humans again. When word spreads about what we can do, every bully in the galaxy needs to think twice before attacking innocent people." 3 weeks after Captain Walsh's discovery, the human fleet was ready. Admiral Bennett stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive battleship Defiance, watching as 200 ships formed up around him.
Oh, yes.
The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Sleek destroyers, heavily armed cruisers, experimental attack craft, all moving in perfect formation. The journey to Kalari space took 5 days through hyperspace. When they arrived at the edge of the system, Lieutenant Brian Foster immediately began monitoring Dominion communications from his post at the intelligence station. "Sir, the enemy fleet is still in orbit around the Kalari homeworld," he reported. 15 capital ships and about 40 smaller vessels. They appear to be continuing their collection operations. Admiral Bennett studied the tactical display, noting the positions of every enemy ship. Then he opened a communication channel that would be broadcast on every frequency the Dominion used. This is Admiral Frank Bennett of the Human Defense Fleet. His voice rang out across space. You are currently engaged in acts of violence against a peaceful civilization. You have exactly 1 hour to cease all hostile operations and withdraw from this system. After that, we start shooting. The communication channel fell silent. Then Lieutenant Foster began picking up frantic chatter from the Dominion ships. Sir, they're in complete confusion, Foster reported with barely contained excitement. They've never seen ship formations like ours. They're asking each other what humans are and whether this is some kind of trap. One of their commanders is demanding to know where we came from. Down on the Kolari homeworld, survivors huddled in the ruins of their floating cities looked up at the sky in amazement. For the first time in months, they saw something other than Dominion ships in their skies. Elder Kolari leaders who had given up all hope began to weep openly as they watched the human fleet take defensive positions around their planet. The hour countdown had begun, and everyone in the system knew that. The galaxy was about to change forever. The Dominion Empire was about to learn what happened when they picked on someone who could actually fight back. The hour was almost up when the Dominion fleet finally responded. Their massive flagship, a vessel 3 times larger than anything in the human fleet, slowly turned toward Admiral Bennett's formation. Without any warning or communication, it fired a series of bright energy beams that passed harmlessly between the human ships. Lieutenant Brian Foster looked up from his communications. Sir, those were warning shots. They're trying to scare us off. Admiral Bennett almost laughed. The Dominion had just made the biggest mistake of their existence. They thought humans would run away like every other species they'd encountered. They had no idea they were dealing with a civilization that had evolved from predators on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. All ships, this is Admiral Bennett. His voice crackled across the fleet communications. The enemy has opened fire. Weapons are now free. Show them what happens when you threaten innocent people. Captain Mark Rogers was commanding a squadron of destroyers positioned on the fleet's right flank. Ship's engines to maximum power and led his vessels in a direct charge toward the enemy flagship. This is Destroyer Squadron 7, Rogers announced over the BattleNet. We're going straight down their throats. All ships, follow my lead. What happened next shocked the Dominion forces completely. Instead of retreating or trying to negotiate, the human ships accelerated directly toward the enemy fleet. The humans weren't just willing to fight, they were eager for it. The space battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships moved with deadly precision, using tactics that the Dominion couldn't understand or counter. While Dominion vessels fired massive energy beams in straight lines, human ships rolled and weaved through space, making themselves nearly impossible targets. Major Kelly Brown led the first boarding action of the battle. Her Marine unit used specialized cutting tools to breach the hull of a Dominion cruiser, then fought their way through the ship's corridors with a ferocity that terrified the alien crew. These Dominion soldiers have never faced real combat, Brown reported over her helmet radio as her Marines cleared another section of the ship. They're running away from us. They don't know how to fight when someone shoots back. The Dominion troops were tall and physically strong, but they had no experience with the kind of brutal, close-quarters fighting that humans had perfected over thousands of years of warfare, and faced with Marines who moved like hunting wolves. Through their ships, many Dominion soldiers simply threw down their weapons and fled. Commander Tim Johnson was piloting the cruiser Vengeance when enemy fire damaged his ship's main engines. Instead of retreating for repairs, Johnson made a decision that would be remembered forever in human military history. This is Commander Johnson to all ships, he broadcast calmly as his damaged vessel continued toward the largest Dominion command. Ship, my engines are gone, and life support is failing. I'm going to ram their flagship. Tell my family I died fighting for something that mattered. The Vengeance struck the Dominion command vessel at full speed, the explosion lighting up space. Like a small star, the enemy flagship broke in half, its command crew scattered, and its coordination systems destroyed. For the Kolari, Johnson's final transmission echoed across the BattleNet, and every human pilot repeated those words as they pressed their attacks. The battle's turning point came when Specialist Nicole Davis, Dan, working from her computer station, Aboard the intelligent ship Data Hunter managed something no one had ever done before. She broke through the Dominion's communication encryption and gained access to their entire network. "Admiral, I'm into their systems," Davis reported excitedly. "I can see everything, their ship positions, their command structure, even their personal communications. Sir, I can broadcast on their networks." "Do it," Bennett ordered immediately. Within minutes, images of the battle were being transmitted across the galaxy on every Dominion communication channel. Species that had been enslaved for centuries watched in amazement as the mighty Dominion fleet was being torn apart by these unknown humans. The psychological effect on the Dominion forces was devastating. For over 1,000 years they had ruled, through fear and intimidation. Now, for the first time in their history, they were the ones who were afraid. Their ships began breaking formation and retreating toward the edge of the system. Captain Rogers, his destroyer squadron having destroyed 3 enemy vessels, watched the Dominion flagship limping away with its escort ships. "Admiral, there. Running. The whole enemy fleet is jumping to hyperspace." Admiral Bennett stood on his bridge, watching the last Dominion ships disappear in flashes of light. Around the Kalari homeworld, human ships were already moving into defensive positions, while medical teams prepared to help the alien survivors. "All vessels. This is Admiral Bennett," he announced to the entire fleet. "Cease fire and stand down. The Kalari are free." Down on the planet's surface, the surviving Kalari emerged from their hiding places to see human ships patrolling their skies. The first time in months, they felt safe. And across the galaxy, every oppressed species had seen the same message: the bullies could be beaten. The age of Dominion rule was over. The age of human protection had begun. 6 months after the Battle of Kalari, Ambassador Jake Morrison found himself in a situation he never could have imagined. He was standing in the center of the most important political meeting in galactic history, surrounded by representatives from dozens of alien species he'd never seen before. The Galactic Council. Station called Haven was a marvel of engineering, a massive structure built in neutral space where different civilizations could meet safely. The main assembly hall was designed to accommodate species of all sizes and environmental needs. Some delegates sat in pools of liquid, others hung from the ceiling, and a few existed as glowing energy patterns in special containment fields. Morrison had been chosen as Earth's first galactic ambassador, not because he was a politician. Because he was the captain who had first received the Kalari distress call. The alien delegates wanted to hear from someone who had actually been there when everything started. Elder Kalari, Representative Thelona, stood at the center of the hall, his tall, graceful form still showing signs of the trauma his people had endured. When he spoke, his voice carried across the chamber through universal translators that converted his words into dozens of different languages. 6 months ago, my people faced extinction, Thelanus began, his translucent skin shimmering with emotion. The Dominion Empire had ruled our sector for over 800 years, took our children, destroyed our cities, and treated us like animals. We sent desperate calls for help across the galaxy, and for months, no one answered. The chamber fell silent as Thelanus continued. Then the humans came. They traveled across vast distances to help people they had never met. They fought a battle that cost them lives and resources, asking for nothing in return. The humans have done what we thought was impossible. They defeated the Dominion Empire. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Representatives from dozens of species nodded their various heads, waved tentacles, or flashed lights. In approval, the story of the human victory had spread across the galaxy, giving hope to civilizations that had lived in fear for generations. But then Thelanus' tone changed, and Morrison could sense the shift in the room's atmosphere. However, the Kalari elder said carefully, "We must also acknowledge that the humans' capacity for violence frightens many of us. We have seen the recordings of their battles. We have witnessed their willingness to sacrifice their own lives. In combat, this level of aggression is unknown to most galactic species." Morrison had been expecting this moment. He stepped forward to the speaker's platform, looking out at the assembled aliens with calm determination. Many of them had never seen a human before, and he could feel their curiosity and nervousness as they studied him. "I understand your concerns," Morrison said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Yes, humans are capable of violence. We evolved on a dangerous world where we had to fight to survive. But there's something important you need to understand. We don't want to rule you. We want to protect you. There's a big difference." He paused, letting his words be translated and absorbed by the diverse audience. "On Earth, we have an old saying, the strong should protect the weak, not prey upon them. That's not just pretty words to us. It's how we live." The debate that followed lasted for days. Some species worried that humans were too dangerous to trust. Others argued that humanity was exactly what the galaxy needed. In the end, a compromise was reached that would change the course of galactic history. The Terran Defense Corps was officially established as an independent military organization with a simple mission: protect innocent civilizations from those who would harm them. Admiral Lisa Carter, who had made the original decision to answer the Coeri distress call, was chosen as the TDF's first commander. Within weeks, human ships were patrolling the outer regions of the galaxy, areas that had been abandoned to pirates and slavers for centuries. The TDF vessels were easy to recognize. They flew with their weapons powered, but not targeted, broadcasting messages of peace in dozens of languages. Back on Earth, the changes were just as dramatic. Humanity had found a purpose that united them, like never before. The old conflicts between Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies seemed petty compared to protecting entire civilizations from extinction. 10-year-old Billy Thompson was lying on the grass in his backyard in Ohio, staring up at the night sky through his telescope. The stars seemed different somehow, brighter and more welcoming than they used to be. "Dad," Billy called to his father, who was sitting on the porch nearby. "Why do the stars seem brighter now?" His father, Captain Roy Thompson, smiled as he looked. Up at the same stars? Roy had commanded a destroyer squadron during the Kalari battle, and he still wore the small Kalari crystal that their government had given to every human veteran. "Because, son," Roy said quietly, "there are guardians up there now, and when good people stand watch, the darkness doesn't seem so scary anymore." 2,000 light-years away, Captain Jessica Mitchell was sitting on the bridge of the TDF ship Liberty when her communications officer picked up a familiar signal. Another distress call from a species under attack.
"Captain."
"We're receiving a transmission from the Zelen system," reported Lieutenant Chris Parker. "It sounds like the same pattern we've seen before. Pirates are attacking their orbital stations." Mitchell looked around at her crew, humans from Earth, Mars, Europa, and the asteroid belt, all united in their mission to protect the innocent. "Well, people," she said with a grin, "looks like somebody needs help. Are we ready to go remind some bullies that the galaxy has new rules?" The answer came back from every station on the bridge at once. "Yes, ma'am."
Ow.
The Liberty turned toward the Zelen system and jumped to hyperspace. Across the galaxy, dozens of other TDF ships were doing the same thing, answering calls for help. From species that had never known protection before, humanity had found its place among the stars. The galaxy would never be the same.